A central question and direction of Mandalorian Season 3 seems to be headed towards is the mystery surrounding the state of Mandalore. But what is really curious about the whole situation is that everyone around Mando doesn't seem to be able to provide a clear indication as to what Mandalore is like as of this moment. And every time Mando asks the people around him, we do get some rather conflicting and obscure explanations, all of which raises more questions than it answers. Not to mention, by the end of episode 1 when Mando sets off for Mandalore, we get this rather cryptic and foreboding remark from Bo Katan.
Goodbye, Dinjarin.
Almost as if she was expecting him to die on this journey. So to understand what the true state of Mandalore is, we need to evaluate the different perspectives surrounding the planet, namely what the armourer thinks is happening and what Bo Katan thinks as well. According to the armourer herself, Mandalore is essentially cursed. The planet is poisoned and toxic to the point that nothing survives being in contact with the place. The Empire's decision to essentially lay waste to the entire planet resulted in its surface being turned to glass crystallized by fusion beams, and there is certainly a lot of evidence that supports this claim. Based on the few clips that we got in the Book of Boba Fett, the damage to the planet's surface was extensive. Known as the Great Purge of Mandalore, and especially on the Night of 1,000 Tears, the entire planet was devastated, and the toxicity of the planet seems to be supported by the idea that the Empire mostly used KX series security droids and Viper droids to clean up any survivors. And for the most part, any non-droid Imperials were mostly restricted to operations above ground. But the biggest problem with the explanation the armourer gives is the fact that much of the explanation is laced with superstitious rhetoric and religious fervor. In fact, the explanation given is mostly boiled down to the belief that the entire planet is cursed by Bo Katan and her forces' refusal to adhere to the old ways.
If, however, it is not won in combat and falls into the hands of the undeserving, it will be a curse unto the nation. Mandalore will be laid to waste, and its people scattered to the four winds.
And in all honesty, it's not entirely clear as to how credible these beliefs are. Not to mention, the way in which the Watch maintains its power and control over its members is precisely through this religious paradigm, and specifically, the control over information. For much of Season 1 to Season 2, we see Din Djarin learn more about the Mandalorians than he ever did while working for the Armourer. In fact, how little Mando knew about Mandalorian history despite being a Mandalorian himself gives us some indication that the Armourer and the Watch, by extent, don't always share information freely with its members. And we've seen this time and time again, when Mando is surprised that there are other Mandalorians who do take off their helmet, and when he was just learning about the significance of the dark saber. Now, all of this could be chalked down to the fact that the writers needed a way to inform the audience about all this exposition, which is why they had Mando play dumb. But consider for a moment that what if the reason why Mando doesn't know about all this is because the Watch doesn't really want its members to know more. Keep in mind that because the children of the Watch follow the old ways, it means that you don't have to be born on Mandalore to become a Mandalorian. Instead, to be a Mandalorian isn't strictly limited by blood, but is open to all for recruitment, specifically through the process of a foundling, a new member adopted by an existing Mandalorian. So really, I wouldn't be too surprised by the idea that most of the members of the Watch are actually non-native Mandalorians. Given how much emphasis the Armourer places on foundlings being the future,
The foundlings are the future.
constantly seeking a way to bolster their ranks through recruiting children far and wide. But what this also means is that most of these recruits have zero knowledge about the history of Mandalore and what came before. The only knowledge that they would have would be the ones they were taught by the members of the Watch, basically allowing the Armourer to dictate what should be made known and what should not. And what this does, besides giving an explanation as to why Mando knows so little about Mandalore, is cast a lot of suspicion as to what the Armourer is not revealing. More specifically, why is she set against returning to Mandalore, and why is she so committed to staying away from that planet as far as possible? Regardless of the reason, it then becomes pretty clear that whatever explanations given by the Armourer regarding the state of Mandalore must be interpreted with a grain of salt. But while the armourer talks about how Mandalore is cursed, when it comes to Bo Katan's explanation, things become even more confusing. When Mando first meets Bo Katan and she recruits him for a job, she lays out her plan and intentions up front. The basic premise is that she intends to lead her people home and restore Mandalore to its former glory, hence why they need weapons and supplies. However, her intentions surprise Mando, as he was previously taught that the planet was cursed, to which Bo Katan essentially tells him that they are all lies spread by enemies who want to separate them, hinting at the fact that Mandalore is completely fine but potentially still occupied by enemies. However, all of this is put into question in episode 1 of season 3, when Mando tells Bo Katan that he intends to find the mines of Mandalore. She tells him that it is nothing but superstition and that
planet has been ravaged, plundered, and poisoned.
Which severely confuses Mando, as she told him previously that the curse was a lie. And so this moment with Bo Katan seems to indicate that what the armourer said is true, and might suggest that Bo Katan was previously lying to simply get what she wants, essentially forcing Mando to find out all by himself. But what is most mind-boggling about the entire situation is that both the armourer and Bo Katan haven't really been bothered to find out about the truth regarding the state of Mandalore. I mean, it's a really simple solution. All you need to do is to send a droid down to the planet's surface and scan the area to determine its habitability. You would think that a bunch of elite warriors would have the common sense to do so, especially regarding a planet that is supposedly near and dear to their hearts. And so, the fact that neither of them have been near the planet recently might suggest that their explanations may not be as complete as it seems. Either that, or they both know the truth and just aren't willing to tell it. So, just what exactly is the real state of Mandalore? While both the armourer and Bo Katan make some conflicting and confusing claims, the trailers that we got might give us some clue as to what Mandalore is actually like. And doing some deep forensics suggests that the surface of Mandalore isn't as toxic as everyone makes it out to be. In fact, when we stitch a few shots together, we can see Mando and Grogu walking around like everything is normal, casually observing the rubble around them. And even after going into the mines, everything seems to be fine. In fact, Grogu doesn't even need a mask or shield, which suggests that the environment is pretty normal. In fact, as the two explore the mines, they encounter some sort of a monster, letting us know that there are still living things on the planet. But what raises even more curiosity is that in a separate shot, we can see a dome surrounded by healthy green pastures, the sort of building structure that is reminiscent of the Mandalorian city of Sundari, letting us know that these structures could very well be Mandalorian. Now, to be fair, we don't know if this is still indeed on Mandalore. The environment is drastically different from the rocky, sandy characteristics that we've come to know about the planet. However, what is really interesting about this shot isn't the environment but the ship that is being flown. This right here is a Mandalorian Gauntlet, a ship commonly used by the Mandalorians during the Clone Wars and in Rebels as well, essentially pre-Purge. And if we match it with the other shots, we can actually see Mando and Grogu flying this exact ship in and around Mandalore, which suggests that Mando must have found it at some point while exploring Mandalore. So if this is indeed the case, then the shot with the domes could also be in a different part of the planet. And so my theory is that neither explanation from Bo Katan or the armourer are fully right, but not fully wrong either. Based on the clips from the trailers, it's possible that Mandalore was only partially poisoned and destroyed by the Empire. Areas which experience the heaviest fighting are likely to be damaged beyond repair, but there are still parts of the planet where the damage is not as severe and parts that could have been relatively untouched by the conflict, bringing us to the conclusion that Mandalore is only partially habitable. But I also think that Bo Katan's initial intentions to retake Mandalore are also supported by what we see in the trailers. In fact, if you keep the Gauntlet ship in mind, we actually do see other shots of Mando engaging in a dogfight using the very same ship against Imperial fighters. So what this might mean is that while Mandalore is partially habitable, the parts that are habitable are currently occupied by Imperial remnant forces. Hence the need to retake Mandalore and setting up the major incoming conflict between the Empire and the Mandalorians. So that is why I think Mandalore isn't exactly uninhabitable and what is really going on the planet. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.